something that we should be more conscientious about, I guess, is that the fact that the claim that all psychopaths are fearless. So that we say they cannot learn because they don't fear the consequences, or that they do all these crazy things because they are fearless. They do experience fear. So people, by saying that they are fearless, people like the general audience, the general public, tends to assume that there's like zero fear, like there's no emotion there whatsoever. Well, that's not the case. It's relative, compared to the other people who are like normally functioning individuals on their in terms of fear and other emotions, they tend to seem as if they fear consequences of their actions less than others. So it's a relative statement. It's not an absolute statement. What people often believe is an absolute statement. So we have done some research in which we say, okay, fear is not like one big lump of emotion, right? It's not one thing. We also know from the way that the brain works, and also from animal research, that fear has like multiple components. You can make a distinction between people who how we respond to threatening events versus the actual experience of the emotion fear. I found evidence in the literature on psychopathy indicating that they do seem to have an impairment in how they respond to threats, to threatening events. And you can measure it in the body, you can measure it in the brain. They don't see danger. It's really like that. It doesn't mean that they don't fear the danger less. We didn't find like very robust evidence saying that they don't feel the emotion of fear. That's not to say that it may not be the case that they still experience it less. It's just that it's less absolute and carved in stone as many have been kind of start to believe at some point.
So I've heard this a lot when it comes to people who have sociopathy, that they don't experience fear, or they don't experience fear the same way. Kind of like how you said, when you can let off a gun next to someone who has, sociopathy, and they won't get as startled as easily. So do you have any fears, or do you have any, I also know that you don't want to be tied to any type of weakness in any type of way, but do you have any fears or anything that in the past you might have experienced and be like, oh wow, I think that might have been fear that I just felt,
Yes. So I should say, like, I don't mind being tied to weakness now.
Okay.
I guess post therapy. Yeah. I'm like a dummy, like an idiot. Like that. I have all sorts of weaknesses and vulnerabilities. Like I'm barely scraping by most days or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, so one thing that's kind of interesting about fear is to kind of understand that there are multiple, I guess, emotions. And I guess, this is true. I think we call them primary and secondary emotions, right? Primary ones kind of don't need a context. They're simpler, they're more primitive, and they come from probably a different area of the brain, that like lizard brain, right?
Yeah.
So one of these emotions I have, or I guess fears, is a phobia. And we know that phobias are like, kind of inborn, like, so I have a phobia of rodents. And I have a niece who, even as a baby, had a phobia of rodents. She'd see like even a picture of like Tom and Jerry or something and be like,
that's funny.
Yeah, have a real freak out about it. So, and some people, it's not rational. It's not even like something that you learn from your environment. Some people have phobias of spiders or snakes, or Indiana Jones, right, with snakes. So mine is rodents, and they still kind of haunt me in my dreams. And then other fears, I guess the fear that I would have would again be kind of most associated with like the way I was raised, which would be like the thing that, I worried about, maybe without even being consciously aware that I was worried about, was that I would have like my personhood like violated again. So that's my biggest trigger always, is if it feels like I'm about to have kind of my identity, my personhood, my autonomy violated, like a personal boundary violated, then that is like the thing that like will spike my blood pressure, will spike my my heart rate.